Hello, in this video I want to talk about something that not only defines you as an individual, but also a culture, a nation, and that is the mouth, this part of our body, because it does three important things that are that you can't live without. Basically, you breathe, you eat, and you communicate. So let's start with communication and the sweetness of speech. For example, it is unnecessary to use bad words. Let me give you two examples. First of all, in Bosnia, for example, also in the Balkans, people cuss a lot. They use bad words. It's so integrated into the culture, and there is a smorgasbord also, of choices. So you can combine whatever, and it's so integrated that a taxi driver can use it, parents use it. There's even a way to use bad words to say, give off good intentions to a child. Now that is very interesting, and compare that to Sweden, for example, who has a very limited amount of bad words. So, for example, many Swedes use English words. There are basically two. One is the S and one is the F word. And everything of that is not good, in my opinion. Why? Because it's a total unnecessary, and it also drains you because words have magic. When you say something bad because you dropped something on your foot, that's maybe the least bad. If you say something to someone else, that is putting off bad energy. And if you say something about yourself, like, oh, I'm so or this, you use magic basically, because words stick. And when it is so integrated into the culture, it sort of drains it. So it can drain a culture, but also an individual, and make you look poor in a sense when you use too many words or try to sound cool. For example, if you're non-English speaking and you use English bad words and so on. So sweetness of speech is important because words are magic. It is also important to think about how you communicate with yourself, like quietly, mentally, or do you use words as, oh, I'm so stupid, I should have known this or that, or do you say things that like that to someone else? That is also very important, because words stick around. Words are powerful. It's everything we do communicate is based on words. In the beginning was the word. So sweetness of speech, and personally, in my opinion, it's not important. Like, for example, my English here, it's not perfect, like some academic from London might sound, but the intention, the way of communicating is honest. It is pure. There is nothing dirty I want to communicate. So it is not a technical issue. It is more of an intentional issue, and also an issue of purity, because that defines a personal character. And within a culture, within our society, we have various layers of culture, one can stagnate on one level, one can come up here or here or here, and it is nothing that is based on outer appearances. It is a thing of communication, ideas, and also when you have sweetness of speech, people will approach you in a different manner, even though they themselves might use faulty words. You will grow the character of being pure in your way of communicating, and that is very important. And then we have food consumption, how fast one eats, how slow, how much. You know, food consumption is controlled through the mouth and later on in the stomach, but we leave out the stomach for this time. What we eat, you see, affects our character, and as a nation, and it can also affect a nation, a region, a culture. For example, in my opinion, if a culture eats a lot of garlic because they eat lots of red meat, so it needs to have this sort of antiseptic function in the body, and also a lot of bread that is lots of gluten, meat, industrial meat, and garlic. That is very stirring food. If you think about the Vedic or yogi way of eating, I don't know, where you have stimulative food, you have food that is lazy sort of, and food that is made to be good basically. So like chili, caffeine, alcohol, cigarettes, red meat, bread, garlic. If you think about all those countries where this is consumed a lot, have had problems of conflicts. I'm not saying it's the only factor. I'm saying it's a part of it. Like in the Balkans, for example, it's lots of stimulative food, lots of coffee, cigarettes, bread. And bread is not what it used to be. The wheat has been modified long ago in the 70s on this global industrial scale. So it is not what it used to be like 200 years ago. If you want to have that kind of wheat, you have to go to some special local organic farmer or something. And we have the third thing we do with our mouth, and that is breathing. How do you breathe? Do you breathe with your lungs up here? Do you breathe with your stomach? Do you take extra breaths before you decide something? How well is the breath? So that is also an indication of not the character, but it can shape it. If you breathe fast and high up, you're not getting enough of fresh oxygen, or like you're not filling yourself up enough. And of course, it is not something that is supposed to be done all the time, like just sitting and being mindful and breathing and all that. But one needs to refill. So one gets out in the world, does some sports or whatever, but one comes down, fills up with the fresh oxygen, and that is good for the head, of course. So that you can see, for example, a person, a culture that uses lots of slangs, lots of dirty words, culture that eats, or a person that eats lots of stimulatives, stimulative food, red meat, gluten, coffee, things that just get you like this, and that also breathes bad or smokes too much. That is one factor of not only creating delusions for yourself, but also as a collective culture or region, creating a sort of tension in a way. Because the way I see it, for example, if we have 1 million people here, and half of them sort of vibrate some sort of a good vibes, good honest vibes, and the other ones less good honest vibes, that is okay. But if you have too much of the bad, then that sort of negative, fast-going, suspicious vibe will be the dominant force. And if you have a region of 1 million people which are dominantly relaxed, trustworthy, and so on, that is going to create a more honest, more relaxed ambient for the people to live in. And I've talked about this in my videos, some videos before, like in Sweden, for example, that had 200 years of peace and really could cultivate this sort of peaceful, happy vibe. I mean, it wasn't perfect. I mean, Sweden had its problems. You know, they didn't participate in World War II. They had horrible working conditions in the late 19th century. But generally, if we look over a time span, it had time to cultivate this sort of culture, and that is being infiltrated right now with various different cultures. And if we look, for example, in the Balkans, where it's always sort of hit first, think later, or very suspicious and so on, we can understand the historical parts, of course, but also there's an individual part in this, which is basically based around the mouth. What you eat, how do you talk, how do you breathe, like, do you breathe clean air, do people breathe out, for example, and you can always ask yourself what comes first, bad conditions that create this, or bad tendency among the people that create bad governance, or so on. But that's not important. The important thing is to see like how many factors can be involved in an individual character and in a collective character, because those two are they mirror each other, basically. And this is something that I was just looking or reading at something today, and I thought about this because way back, maybe more than 10-12 years ago, I read something about this, about the breath, the mouth being the gates to the 3 keys of life, or whatever. And also I remember the first time I meditated, which was during the riots in Gothenburg in 2001, when George Bush came, and it was Sweden who was the head of the EU at the time. And in the midst of all this sort of chaos and stuff, there was a meditation group, so I tried that, jokingly, reluctantly, but those 15-20 minutes really made me realize, like, wow, there's a whole another like area to be in. It wasn't taught in schools, and friends who you grow up with. If the school doesn't have it in the area you live in, doesn't have some kind of a body-mind practice, you don't know about it. But that was the introduction for me, and ever since I have been doing checkups, basically, but to see how you are doing, because sometimes during various things, like if you're doing something productive in your life, or not productive, but you have lots of things to take care of, you can get really caught up. So do a checkup, and it's easy. You just go to your mouth and start from there, sort of. That was that. Breathe well, eat good, and do some sweet talking. Take care, and all the best.